China today represents a completely different world, especially when it comes to technology and scientific achievements. This also applies to the space program, which has made huge leaps over the years. In 2007, the Chang'e-1 satellite was launched to create a three-dimensional map of the lunar surface. 3 years later, in 2010, the mission was continued by Chang'e-2, whose purpose was to study and search for a suitable landing site for the next spacecraft, Chang'e-3. After completing all tasks on the Moon, Chang'e-2 was sent to the asteroid known as Taos to study it in detail. Previously, its image could only be obtained with ground-based radar telescopes, but thanks to the Chinese spacecraft, for the first time we have images of the asteroid from a distance of only 3 kilometers. In addition, it is thanks to Chang'e-2 that mankind now has a complete topographic map of the Moon with a resolution of 7 meters. In 2013, China joined the ranks of countries that have made a soft landing on the Moon, becoming the third country after the USSR and the United States to achieve such a success. The Chang'e-3 lander landed in the Bay of Rainbows, landing a lunar lander called Yutu on the surface. This success was the first soft landing on the Moon in 37 years. In addition to its primary mission, the vehicle was equipped with a telescope for stargazing, making it also the first lunar observatory. In 2019, China achieved a historic success by becoming the first country to make a soft landing on the back side of the Moon. This unique achievement, previously unattainable by other spacefaring nations, was a major step in space exploration. In addition to the first landing on the back side of the Moon, the mission included an experiment that opened up a whole new perspective for future space colonies. China became the first nation to be able to grow seeds on another celestial body. Inside a special capsule installed on the lunar station, Earth conditions were briefly recreated. This allowed rape, potato, and cotton seeds to germinate successfully. Although the experiment did not last long, it proved that conditions could be created on the Moon to support plant life, making it feasible to build bases with a life support system that included growing plants. The lander is still working on the Moon and regularly sends new data back to Earth. Thanks to its durability and reliability, Yutu became the first lunar rover in history to operate on the Moon for such a long time. But that's not all. While exploring the area, Yutu encountered an unusual event. Its instruments recorded a strange object in the distance, which immediately caught the attention of both Chinese engineers and the world community. To find out the nature of the object, the engineers sent a lunar rover to examine it in more detail. When Yutu approached the object, it turned out to be just a rock. However, the rock was an unusual shape. China's further success in lunar exploration was not long in coming. In 2020, the country became the third in the world to deliver lunar soil back to Earth. This became possible thanks to the Chang'e-5 mission. This expedition allowed scientists to obtain soil samples that will help answer many questions about the origin of the Moon, its geology and opportunities for future exploration. A special 2-meter drill was used for this task, which was able to drill through the soil and extract samples from beneath the surface. This phase was a crucial part of the mission to study the Moon from its backside. After completing the drilling and collecting the material, which amounted to almost 2 kilograms, the samples were carefully packed into a special container. This container was then moved from the landing vehicle into a special sealed capsule mounted on the return module. The next step was to separate the sample module from the landing platform and lift it into the Moon's orbit. Here the return module successfully docked with the orbital module, which had been waiting for its task all this time. The docking looked very impressive. The orbital module, equipped with 3 special manipulators, carefully flew up to the return module with samples and made a precise autonomous docking. This was the first time in history when such a complex operation was performed fully automatically. China has achieved a unique result here, as all previous missions, such as the American ones, have carried out docking with human participation. The astronaut in orbit had to manually control the docking process with the returning module. The Chinese mission differed in that the entire process was performed without human participation, solely due to artificial intelligence systems. After successful docking, the lunar soil samples were transferred from the return module to a special capsule of the orbiter designed for delivery to Earth. After this stage was completed, the module with the soil samples detached from the orbiter and headed back to Earth. A few days later, the capsule with the precious cargo successfully landed. Thus, China became the first country that was able to deliver soil samples from the back side of the moon, which no one has ever managed before. But China is not going to stop there. Already planned mission Chang'e-7, which should take place in 2026. As part of it, a mini helicopter will be sent to the moon, capable of exploring the surface of the moon in places inaccessible to other vehicles. This will be a new technological revolution in space exploration. And by 2028, China plans to send to the moon an apparatus resembling a 3D printer. Its task will be to collect local material from which it can independently create building blocks. These blocks will become the basis for structures that can be used at future lunar bases. China's ambitious plans do not end here. Within the next decade, the country intends to build the first experimental lunar station. As part of its ambitious plans for space exploration, China is actively cooperating with other countries. Many nations have already signed up to the lunar base construction project. Most recently, China also demonstrated a new spacesuit that will be used by the first settlers at the lunar base. This spacesuit is designed to take into account the harsh conditions on the moon, such as extreme temperature differences, high radiation and lack of atmosphere. However, China's ambitions do not end with the moon. In parallel, the country is actively exploring Mars. In 2021, China became the second country in the world to successfully land a vehicle on the surface of the Red Planet. As part of this mission was delivered Mars rover Zhuzhou, which drove almost 2 kilometers on the Martian surface, studied the composition of the soil, studied the magnetic field and took many pictures. During its work, it transmitted more than 560 gigabytes of information back to Earth, including photos and data on the composition of the atmosphere and soil. Unfortunately, in 2022, the rover was hit by a massive dust storm that knocked out its solar panels. The latest images from orbit showed that it has since remained standing in the same spot where the storm caught it. China plans to conduct its next mission to Mars by 2031. As part of it, scientists plan to repeat what has already been done on the moon, to collect samples of Martian soil and bring them to Earth for detailed study. It's a complex task that will require performing an autonomous docking in Mars orbit, launching from its surface and returning the capsule to Earth. Despite the difference in funding between the US and China, which amounts to billions of dollars a year, that hasn't stopped China from achieving impressive results. For example, right now, China's Tiangong space station, which translates to Heavenly Palace, is above our heads. There are 3 astronauts on board at all times, and that number increases to 6 during crew changes. Tiangong is one of the most modern space stations, and its development began back in 2010. However, the on-orbit assembly process itself was surprisingly fast. The station's first module, called Tianhe, was delivered into orbit in 2021. This module serves as the base element of the station and is also its control center. The base module of the Chinese space station not only serves as the control center, but is also the main place for the astronauts to live. Here they work, conduct experiments, eat, rest, sleep and train. Everything in this module is arranged so that astronauts can comfortably perform their tasks even in the conditions of long-term stay in space. On board, there are individual sleeping quarters, a kitchen where food can be cooked and heated, and exercise equipment to keep fit in weightlessness. Particular attention has been paid to optimizing space and using the latest technology. In 2022, the second module, called Wentian, was docked to the station. This module performs several important functions. First, it is experimental, providing additional laboratories for scientific research. Second, it houses additional sleeping quarters that can be used to temporarily house the extended crew during astronaut rotation or when needed. In addition, Wentian duplicates the station control functions in case of emergencies, which significantly increases the reliability of the entire system. A few months after the second module was attached to the station, the third module, which was named Mengtian, was delivered. This module is actually a copy of Wentian and was designed specifically to increase the station's ability to conduct scientific experiments. With the addition of the third module, the station became even more functional, which allowed to significantly expand its research potential. There are plans to add another module to the station in the future, which will be equipped with a powerful telescope. Looking at the interior of the Tiangong station, especially its base module, it is obvious that the Chinese have paid special attention to comfort and practicality. The interior spaces look spacious and well organized. One of the main features is the extensive use of wireless technology. Most of the systems on the station are connected to each other without wires, which frees up space and makes it more convenient to work. In comparison, the International Space Station still uses wires to connect equipment, making its interior space more cluttered. The kitchen on the station, which also features convenience and modern equipment. One of the main advantages of this kitchen is the presence of a microwave oven. It allows you to heat up food for the entire crew in just a few minutes, which saves a lot of time. For comparison, on the International Space Station there is no microwave, and food is heated there either with hot water or in special ovens designed to heat cans and bread. In the same module is a gym where astronauts train daily. In weightlessness, the Earth's gravity no longer acts on the body, because of which muscles and bones begin to gradually atrophy. To prevent this from happening, each crew member is required to spend at least 2 hours a day on the simulators. Exercises include running, rowing and strength training, which help maintain muscle tone and strengthen bones. The technical side of the station is also well thought out. For example, only the central module of the Tiangong station is designed to dock with spacecraft. China has its own Shenzhou spacecraft for this purpose. Both spacecraft are built on a similar 3-module scheme. The central module is designed for the crew, and this is where the astronauts are during launch, flight and landing. The rear part of the ship contains the engines and equipment necessary for control and navigation. The front of the ship, or orbital module, serves as a kind of rest area. The development of the Chinese Shenzhou spacecraft began back in the 1990s, which allowed engineers to immediately use in its design the most advanced technology at that time. This gave the ship a serious advantage over its counterparts. For example, a fully electronic control system was initially implemented aboard the Shenzhou. One of the key differences of the Shenzhou is the design of its orbital module. Chinese engineers made it reusable and functional, which greatly expands the ship's capabilities. Once separated from the rest of the ship, this module can remain in orbit in autonomous mode for several months. It is equipped with solar panels, a navigation system and can be redocked with the next ship, becoming its orbital module. This greatly increases mission efficiency by allowing the module to be used again, rather than wasting resources on building a new one. In comparison, on the Soyuz, the orbital module, like the module with engines, is simply shot off and then burns up in the atmosphere when the ship returns to Earth. Such a disposable system, while reliable, is expensive to build new modules for each mission. The Chinese, on the other hand, have implemented a reusable concept, making their approach more economical and environmentally friendly. This decision is closely tied to China's overall strategy to develop a reusable rocket system similar to what Elon Musk is developing with his company SpaceX. China is already actively testing its rockets, which will be able to land and be reused for new launches, significantly reducing the cost of space programs. The first launch of the crewed Shenzhou spacecraft took place in 2003. This launch made China the third country in the world to send a human into space on its own. The first Chinese astronaut to make history was Yang Liwei. Yang Liwei spent 90 minutes in orbit before successfully returning to Earth. The next launch of the Shenzhou spacecraft with crew took place in 2005. This mission, called Shenzhou 6, already included 2 astronauts. This made it possible to conduct more complex experiments and test the crew's performance under conditions of prolonged stay in space. In orbit, the crew of the Shenzhou 6 mission spent 4 days, successfully accomplished all the tasks, and then safely returned to Earth. The next step was the Shenzhou 7 mission, which was launched in 2008. This mission is notable for the fact that one of the Chinese astronauts made the first spacewalk in the country's history. However, such a strategy has had its consequences. For example, Americans have refused to cooperate with China in space for fear of technology transfer. Moreover, China's access to the International Space Station was denied, prompting the country to develop its own projects. This decision was the starting point for China's own space station, the construction of which began with the Shenzhou 9 mission in 2012. It was then that the first docking flight of a crewed spacecraft to the station took place and its full occupancy began. At that time, the station was just one module, but it was only the first step on the way to a large-scale project. Today, more than a decade later, China's Tiangong station is a full-fledged complex of 3 modules equipped with the most modern technologies. Over 13 years, 14 successful launches have been made to it. The last of them took place on October 29, 2024 and delivered 3 new astronauts to the station. Since its inception, 24 people have already traveled aboard the station. China's ambitions in space do not end here. The country's immediate plans include sending a research satellite to Jupiter and other planets of the solar system by 2050. This project is aimed at studying the large giant planets, their satellites and the peculiarities of their atmospheres. China also plans to send a probe to an asteroid and return its samples to Earth, similar to what the Americans did with the asteroid Bennu. These samples will help scientists better understand the origin of the solar system and its early history. China is also developing ambitious deep space exploration projects. One such project is the launch of a powerful telescope that will be aimed at studying distant galaxies and expanding knowledge of the universe. I want to apologize in advance for any errors in the text or voiceover. I am still learning and the channel language is not my native language. The voiceovers are done by artificial intelligence, so if you notice any inaccuracies, please let me know so I can fix them and improve the quality of the content. I'd also welcome your feedback and thoughts on the topic. Your support in the comments motivates me to keep finding new and exciting stories. Thank you for your understanding and participation. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and click the bell so you don't miss new stories.